Yeah,
Let's talk about immigration first. And this is a very hot button topic, but
I would actually appreciate the youth perspective on immigration. Actually, I think that's a great way to start.
my opinion, I think immigration is important. I think anyone should have the right to live wherever they want. But I'm of the opinion of, I think a majority of Canada, our numbers currently are too high.
I am 100% towards moving into a greener future. However, the practicalities of, let's say, flying airplanes, for example, they're not quite suited to the new technology yet. Our battery technology, the density, storage density isn't there. It's like trying to get a baby to drop the soother and take the carrot.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Round Table Battlefield. Alert, 2 weeks from the time that we're taping this. 2 weeks until the federal election.
Oh, federal election. I thought you were going to say till the Jets win the Stanley Cup.
I wish we could talk about that, but no, we're not talking about the Jets today.
Too soon.
Too soon for the cup.
Yeah,
We have a list.
We do have a list.
It's just, generic list of just the policy proposals between both the Liberal and the Conservative Party. We're going to stick to those two because, let's not really kid ourselves. It's going to come down to those two parties. I'm sorry for anyone who maybe really has their heart set on one of the parties.
There's a great talking point. What is your advice to supporters of the NDP or the Bloc or the People's Party? What should their mindset be going into this election?
I think with everything that's at stake, I think it's a smarter idea to maybe kind of jump ship to the two parties for this election. After the election's over, I think that's when I think a lot of the fringe parties should really take a look at themselves and say, okay, what can we do now to actually make an impact? Mm-hmm. I think this is an opportunity where truly, I think this is one of the first elections, or one of the very few in Canadian history, where it's almost pretty much solely between two parties. And it's always sort of been like that, but the NDP and I guess the Bloc Party to a degree as well, they've always had a foot in the door in some way, but it really seems like it's just solely two parties, and that's it, because you've seen NDP support flock dramatically towards the Liberals. If you look at, again, polls are not indicative of everything, but you look at poll numbers, they are tanking in favor of pretty much everything going towards the Liberal Party because of what is at stake for this election. So I just think focus on the two parties now. Once the election's done, try and figure out how increase the amount of parties. I think there's a demand for people want more. They want more options, because if we just
increasing the amount of parties, that's an interesting thought.
bring in more, because I think there are some parties out there.
Bring back the rhinos.
Bring back the rhinos.
Now we're talking. Now we're getting
exactly.
All right.
I think we need to criminalize gravity.
Yes,
as the rhinos once said.
Their best platform policy.
The rhinos are a satirical party. Please do not go to the comments screaming that that's
Think
true.
of the ramifications for SpaceX, though. If we get rid of gravity, come on.
SpaceX goes out of business?
No, their profit margin goes through the roof. They don't have to burn any fuel. You just toss the satellites up.
See you in 10 months. Actually, we talked about the comments. Why don't we talk about that really quick?
That
YouTube
is
comments.
True. We are very interested in what your opinion is of our opinion, right? We all are just basically expressing opinions on this show. This has nothing to do with anybody else. We're just individuals giving a rant. But we're very curious to know what you think about it. And we know that we've had some issues with our comments in the past, but we're going to make sure that that gets taken care of, because we really would like to hear your input. So feel free to comment on either our Facebook post or our YouTube post, wherever you see us on social media. Be sure to say hi or tell us why we're full of it.
So what topic would you like to start on? Because again, so we have this giant booklet
that we can't talk about everything.
We can't talk about everything, but we have this giant booklet that goes through virtually every single major issue, domestic and foreign. And it just gives us the the plans from both the conservative and the liberal side, and we're just gonna.
Yeah, and I don't know. This obviously isn't in alphabetical order, but the first topic is a Poilievre point. And Poilievre suggests that national licensing standards would be a wonderful thing for Blue SEALs and doctors and nurses to be able to work in any province without requiring additional certifications. And that sounds like a pretty good idea. I also know that what isn't mentioned here is that Pierre Poilievre would like to make it simpler for immigrant professionals to get their Canadian license, to meet their licensing standard. Now, that you got to be very careful, because are we lowering our standards to meet another country's education system? That is the major danger that that's the major danger that I can foresee happening, is that there's going to be a push to make it easier versus searching harder. Like, I'm sure there are qualified professionals out there, but maybe it should be a minimum level of work experience in order to make up the licensing differences. If you want to start extending the ability of foreign immigrants to gain professional certifications, we have to make sure that we don't lower our standards, but that we insist that they come up to our standards. However creative way they do manage to do that, that's up to them. But I would be very worried about that.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been a talking point, I think, for quite a while. Like this I think has gone back way beyond the.
This has been a healthcare solution that's been floated for years, is to bring in foreign professionals. Yeah.
Kind of speaking outside of healthcare, it's hard to say, because with the standards thing. Because, for example, I'll give a personal example. I'll keep the details private. But when I worked part-time at a grocery store when I was in high school and college, one of my coworkers, he was, I believe, an engineer, I think from Egypt, I believe.
Oh, neat.
And I think he was a really good engineer. He had a good certification, but he came to Canada and he had to get recertification and training. And what I'm kind of getting at is, what level are the standards of all these other countries at compared to ours? Like, as example, let's just randomly just throwing out countries and names. Like, let's say someone from Australia was a carpenter. Now, okay, so is their standard of carpentry higher than ours? So, like, when they come to Canada, are they automatically qualified compared to a carpenter coming from Italy, for example? Like, there's so much nuance and so many levels to this. And I'm sure the politicians and the parties know that. It's just a matter of where's the level at. Like, I guess, I assume it has to be a case-by-case basis.
Exactly. It's a logistical nightmare.
And that's what I'm saying. It convolutes things. So if they want to simplify the process, that's admirable. But if it's a very nuanced topic to begin with, how can you simplify it? Unless there's something I don't understand.
Right. And I would follow up your comments with an additional statement that if our own education system isn't producing the number of professionals that we need to carry out our day-to-day business, maybe we should start searching inwards. You know, instead of searching outwards for solutions, maybe we should look at ourselves and see what we're doing wrong, and maybe find out why enough students aren't attending medical school, why enough people aren't entering the trades. That's maybe a more productive way to solve this problem than to just, well, let's bring in people from outside.
Yeah. And I think, I guess that's where we get into more of the discussion of how much these trades or these medical students are getting paid. What's the benefits? Like, what's the work-life balance, the cost of university and college? You get into those debates, which those I think have been debated at, and well, they've been debated at nauseum. But
well, the competition between America and Canada has been going on forever, as far as I can remember. And my example is, I had a friend who was a nursing student, and on her graduating day, they set up a job fair at the school. Well, guess who showed up at the job fair? Texas. Texas showed up at the job fair and said, "Don't even bother with Canada. We've got 10 times better program if you come down to San Antonio. We'll give you a down payment for a house, a car, we'll pay for your moves, you work 9 to 5, and you get a real good salary." Anyways, long story short, guess where she is?
Texas.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, but it's good for her in that example. Like she got a very nice cushy deal, but it is unfortunate when you see countries like the United States or
Poaching,
like poaching. Exactly. It's really unfortunate because it seems like a lot of the cream of the crop is just going to other countries.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where I think I would actually agree that maybe there needs to be a conversation about what are we doing wrong internally that people would rather jump ship and go to Texas or Australia, France, wherever, right?
All right. So sounds like we're both in agreement that Pierre is kind of sniffing at a problem, but maybe solving it in a way that he likes, but we might not like.
Sure.
So I'll call that a down. We're going to down vote that one.
Down.
Down, yes.
Jump ship to the Mark Carney.
Yeah, let's get on to equal opportunity. Let's go do some pick. I'll let you pick something from Carney's list here.
Okay, so on the topic of breaking interprovincial barriers, which this is another topic that's been talked about quite a lot. Actually, one thing I would like to talk about is the infrastructure investment, which it says investing in national infrastructure projects like highways, rail, and ports to enhance productivity and competitiveness.
Right, and I think he might be referring to the port that didn't get completed in BC to move out Alberta oil to China.
I was going to say, I believe we scratched that topic, I think, in a previous episode.
Yeah,
but
we may have,
but we can talk about it again here. And just, again,
if he's courting the oil vote, this is probably a good way to do it.
Could be. Yeah. Just with this topic, like just how I kind of see it. Again, I'm still a young person. I'm still trying to understand the world and all the trade and whatnot. But how I see it is I think that's always a major win when you want to make sure that resources can move around the country as quickly as they can.
Yeah, like how do we get oil to refineries?
Exactly. Because
right now we
don't. Well, exactly. Well, I just think nothing frustrates people more than delays and when things are slow.
Red tape.
We don't like inconveniences, and we don't like seeing construction projects that just they never get done because there's, I don't know, too much bureaucracy or whatever.
We're going right down the pipeline thing again, and it's such a messy subject because there's different ideas and nobody can agree on anything.
Nope. And it just convolutes and just drags the whole thing to a halt.
But in the meantime, we can't get oil to China and we can't get oil to Canadian refineries. So there's two problems that we need to solve. Infrastructure probably would solve them, but I don't know if Mark Carney is avoiding specifics. Like these are very general terms, right? We're going to infrastructure, but I'm not going to talk about which infrastructure. I'd like to ask Mark Carney what his plan is to get oil to Canadian refineries.
Right.
And then I'd like to ask him what his plan is to get oil to China from Canada.
Why to China? I'm kind of out of
They're a major buyer.
Okay.
They're one of our major buyers.
Sorry, so we send raw crude oil and then China refines it?
We send coal. We send oil. Pretty much everything we have, we send to China. They're a major industrialized nation, so they need the raw materials and the goods to support their manufacturing.
Sure.
Canada's manufacturing base has eroded over the years. I guess we have to call a spade because of China. It's not all China's fault, but they are the one that everyone likes to throw darts at. And if we're sending our raw materials to another country, we should be doing it as efficiently as we possibly can.
Sure.
Just to keep costs down, and not only costs, but environmental concerns. Because if you have a stabilized way to move your goods, you're going to protect that. And by protecting your pipelines, you're going to inspect them. You're going to have, the higher profile something is, the more you pay attention to it, right? So we need a high profile pipeline. We need everybody, the whole country, to be aware that we're building a pipeline so that it'll receive the national attention it deserves, because a lot of pipeline accidents are because we don't use that pipeline very often. So we're not going to pay as much attention to it. Maybe we're not going to launch a pig as an inspection device that goes along while it's pumping oil, and it inspects the surface for corrosion.
Sure. But
it costs a fortune.
Right.
So what do companies cut costs first? Right. It's the inspections, and then the accidents happen. So a high profile. I'm glad that they're talking about infrastructure, but I wish they'd get specific.
Right. Now, see, I mean, if you want to have a quick debate on this, we can. But and I don't say this as out of like in bad faith. But when I hear a lot of this oil and coal and the pipelines, for people who are maybe environmentalists, people who see again, like everything with climate change and pollution, the whole argument becomes, well, why are we trying to invest all these projects in resources and all these things that we're trying to phase out?
Right.
It's icky.
I totally get what you are referring to, because we're supposed to be moving in one direction. So it feels like we're moving backwards when we talk about the other direction, right?
Sure.
So why are we even talking about the other direction? In my mind, I am 100% towards moving into a greener future. However, the practicalities of, let's say, flying airplanes, for example, they're not quite suited to the new technology yet. Our battery technology, the density, storage density isn't there. So planes are stuck using fossil fuels for the foreseeable future. Of course, that'll eventually get fixed. Militaries operate on oil. You're not going to get a military to convert because
the USA.
Yeah, because their equipment has to work every time.
Right.
They can't. Oh, sorry, the battery's dead. I need 12 hours to charge.
Yeah. Can we postpone the offensive by 12 hours? We got to wait for the batteries.
So where I'm going with it is, like it or not, we're going in the right direction, but we're still dragging along our old past with us because we can't let it go all of a sudden.
And could it be maybe like one of those things where we're climbing, or we're kind of scraping our way to the new world, and we're dragging this thing with us, but as we're dragging to it, we kind of like let little bits of it stay in the past. So then eventually at a point, we won't be dragging anything left, and we'll be just crawling forward.
It's like trying to get a baby to drop the soother and take the carrot.
So you start slow.
That's the silliest thing I could come up with in short notice. But yeah, we're obviously, America is the best example. We're tied to what we know. And what we know is what we're used to and what's worked in the past. And we don't like new things, just like when the automobile replaced horses.
People didn't want to let go of horses.
Thousands of people lost their jobs.
Well, because I think it's one of those things where oil and coal as well, it started the Industrial Revolution. It's what we've been kind of doing for 200 years. Same thing with horses. That was the mode of transport for thousands of years before we invented the car. So I think you could say it's a bit of
an overnight to automobiles.
So
crazy. Feel sorry for anyone working in a stable.
Yeah. Well, because over on the other show I do, Casey Chronicles, we just did an episode about talking about the environment. And again, it's, for me as a young person, I kind of see this as, I want us to move forward and get away from the bad habits, but I can understand, maybe we need to bring some of these bad habits or continue them until we have the technology available. But it's all about a balance, because you don't want to just, in my mind, investing too much in something that we're supposed to be getting away from. It, to me, maybe my short-sighted ignorance would say it's just that's money wasted if we're not going to be using it for a whole lot longer. But how long is, who knows? Maybe it's for 5 years, maybe it's for 20 years. I don't know. Yeah,
you raise really good points. Why build up something that we're just going to tear down eventually? Right. That's a great point. I guess I'd have to look at a map and see, on a graph, some sort of graph that made sense, how our progress was. Because then you could say, well, we should be at this point by this time. And then you can see how long it's going to take to, say, build whatever pipeline is up next, right? Well, if that's going to take 10 years, but in 10 years we've already forecasted that the whole country is going to be running on thorium reactors, well, then we won't build it. But those are the timelines that somebody, a smart person with a calculator, has to figure out and make those decisions. All I'm saying is, in the meantime, until we have a concrete, okay, we're going to switch over to our new source of power, that means now we can drop our old sources of power. But it has to be a one-for-one relationship. We can't drop oil on a promise, right? Yeah. We have to have a demonstrated ability for the new technology to meet the demands, the current demands and future demands, before we can let go of Old Faithful, right? And
we can't hold on to Old Faithful forever. There has to come a point where we're going to have to drop it or reduce it to the point where it's nearly extinct.
Right, and public opinion is probably going to determine the pace of that transition, because there are always going to be detractors. There's always going to be people that want the old way to stay. But it's everybody's job, not just yours and mine, but it's every politician, it's every person's job to try and convince the people that don't see the future. Try to teach the people that maybe are employed as a stable worker or a shoeing expert. Try to show them, if you'd put yourself in that time period, how would you talk them into automobiles?
It would be hard to.
It would be very hard, but it happened. They got through it. They got past it. They did it. So it can be done. We're just in the middle of it right now.
How about we go to taxes and affordability?
Taxes and affordability.
This is one of the big ones that has been a big talking point in the last decade under Trudeau, and especially everything with affordability, kind of since COVID time to now. Affordability has been probably the number one issue, I think, in both Canada and in the United States. So I think this is a topic I think maybe we should jump on.
I like it. The capital gains tax was a huge talking point for the media. Actually covered it quite well, I thought.
Yeah.
And what is your opinion of capital gains taxes? Let's start with that.
I'm going to be 100% honest here. I'm still too young to understand a lot of the things like when it comes to taxes and whatnot. I don't fully know or understand what capital gains tax is, so why don't you enlighten me?
My understanding, the reason it was so controversial is because they didn't just propose a capital gains tax change. They proposed a whole new capital tax calculation strategy. So whereas before, let's say you invested $1,000 and then a year later you sold your investment and ended up with $2,000. Your capital gains tax would be based on that $1,000 that you earned, right? So, and when you file your taxes, you would include that $1,000 in your income. What the new capital gains tax that was proposed was going to do was, let's say you hadn't sold your stock yet, but you knew it was worth that extra $1,000. You haven't sold it, still owns it. It's still in, stock market land. At tax time, the government's going to want the tax on that $1,000, even though you haven't actually put it in your bank account yet. They're still going to charge you the tax that you would pay if you had sold it. And that was a very controversial talking point that got a lot of media attention. And I think the media may have done us a solid because the Liberals are backing down from that.
Yeah, so how about we talk about the Liberal Party? So how about we just kind of rapid fire some of these taxes here? So one of the big ones that has come out, I think, ever since Carney became party leader, he said that a income tax reduction, lower the lowest income tax bracket from 15 to 14%. And I will say, just while on the topic, the Conservative Party with Poilievre, he has introduced the same thing, but instead of going from 15 to 14 like the Liberals, he's going from 15 to 12.75. So lower. So lower income taxes. I think a lot of people could get on board with that, because I think you could. It is fair to say we are a very highly taxed country, and some people understand the necessity of taxes but don't want to be paying excessively. Some people want no taxes to begin with, either and live like a hermit in the forest. But
well, I look at the way when you read these guys are promising this percent, these guys are promising this percent. It seems more complicated than it needs to be, because there is a floor under which you don't pay any tax, right? There's a limit. You don't pay taxes below it. You do pay taxes above it, and then the brackets get worse the higher you go. I would like them to just raise that no tax limit. Oh, I think it's a basic something.
So like for the lowest income earners to
raise that level so that you can earn more money tax free before you have to start paying taxes.
What would I look up, like tax brackets, like Canada tax brackets?
That would be that's a good question. There's too many topics today, so we can't research each and every one of them.
Okay, maybe these numbers here might help us out here. So this is for the Canada's federal income tax rates for the 2024 tax year. So there's a tax rate of 15% on the first $55,800.
Right.
And then it goes up, about 5 to 3% on the next. So it's
too complicated, right?
It's a lot of numbers, and it's kind of vaguely worded. So if you're a young person like me who doesn't understand it, you might look at these graphs and these numbers going, what?
Well, the worst part is there's a solution. When you phone your politician, none of us do, but we should. When you talk to your next politician, ask them about flat tax. Britain's been doing it years. Works great.
Enlighten me about flat
No
tax.
math. You look at how much money you made, you move the decimal place 1 point, that's how much you pay in tax.
So it's adjustable to whatever income you make.
I'm using 10% as my example.
It's relative in a way.
Well, it's a flat tax. You set a rate. Everybody pays it.
Everybody pays
So you make 50 grand, your taxes are 5 grand. You make 500 grand, your taxes are 50 grand.
I see. Okay.
So everybody knows what their taxes is. It's fair across the board, and you don't need to get a math degree to do your own taxes. And then we don't have to go, okay, what was that number again? And this number, and because there's too many numbers. I don't know about you, but I'm an idiot. So I like simple, and taxes are probably the most complicated thing that I do in a year.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, even as a kid,
which is why I don't
nothing was more stressful, even as a kid who didn't even have to do it back then.
Yeah.
Whenever seeing my parents or anyone, any grown up who is doing their income taxes, because it's April, so it's income tax time. Seeing a sprawling if they had a table this size, they have one laptop right here at the end, and there are stacks of papers everywhere. There's calculators, there's pen, there's like a spilt cup of coffee, there's like tear stains going down their faces, going, "What am I doing?"
Yeah.
So, if we could eliminate the month of April from sucking. I think everyone would appreciate that.
Well, then tax day would be a holiday, and we'd all just celebrate not having to do our taxes. That's not a bad idea.
So we can go watch more Jets playoff games.
Darn tootin'. Now we're getting somewhere. It's good that we're solving all the world's problems. I like this.
Colin and Kevin for Prime Minister.
You first. I do like income tax reduction as a talking subject.
Almost everyone.
In fact, I would say if I was a political party, I would say I believe the end goal should be zero income tax. We can't get there in one day, but this is what we're going to do to start us moving in that direction and keep the eye on the prize, zero income tax.
So just to clarify, when you say slowly get rid of income tax, would that just be replaced by the flat tax in that case? Or
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sorry, I was just thinking, if there was no flat tax and you just wanted to slowly reduce income taxes, I'm like, how are we going to pay for anything?
Well, there is an argument of switching from generalized taxes, like general revenue, right? That's the system where now we pay into general revenue, and the government can do whatever they want with that money. But there's the other argument is user fees. So every year you pay a Department of National Defense fee, and every year you pay what else do we need? A road fee, a police fee, a fire fee, an ambulance fee. I'm just pulling stuff out of my head. But that's how the user fee taxation system works, where you don't give money into general revenue. You actually get to know where your money's going. So maybe you don't like how much money you're paying, but at least you know it's going to the police. And that's something, it's an initiative to try and get people to be less upset about how much taxes they pay by showing them exactly where their money is going. That's not a horrible idea. It sounds complicated, though.
Right.
I think I'd stick with the flat tax first, and then worry about, maybe those little subtle details later.
Sure.
Interesting idea.
So in our notes here, under the taxes, there were more proposals under the liberal side than the conservative side, just from what we have here. But let's just quickly spitfire some of these other liberal policies first, because there's more of them here. So there's a first home savings account, increased contribution limits.
Pretty vanilla.
Yeah,
but
kind of standard. There's not really a whole lot to kind of
not
go
a
off
whole
of it.
lot there. first time home buying is probably the biggest decision, other than children. It's probably the most important decision we make. Where are we going to buy a house, and can we buy a house? I like the increasing. I like anything that makes buying your first house easier. Anything that makes it getting out of a rental easier. A lot of people
or someone like
happy.
me, who's
well,
a lot of young people.
A lot of young people are looking to break out into the world, start their life, and the barriers are usually the down payment. Now, what we could do is we could attack it by teaching children at an early age that the time to start saving for their house is now. And then learn about, exactly. You get to learn about the advantages of saving. You get to learn about compound interest. You get to learn about different savings vehicles that are available. What a great thing to teach a young person. We know they're going to want to buy a house, obviously.
I want to buy a house. So I won't go too much into my own personal life, but this is something that I have been doing. Like I'm 21 years old. I'm still living at home, and my parents have been really stressing about saving and almost kind of silently discouraging going into renting. Like if I can buy a house, go for it. Just save, and I'm investing my pants off. Yeah, I'm paying off a car right now. So
you're supposed to use the time that you're living cheaply to save up money for when you're living expensive.
Like I live. Me in general, I live a pretty kind of frugal lifestyle. I don't flaunt cash too much. So all I'm doing is just save. Well,
just hair care products, and that's it.
My entire income is going to my hair. But yeah, so I'm saving and investing my tail off right now, and I think anything that can help a young person buy a house is good, because most people my age, they want to buy a house. Most people I know, they don't want to rent.
Right.
Like they want to buy a house. It's just most people rent because there's no other option, or their parents unfortunately kicked them out a little too early. So.
Yeah, and we're also in a market where we can talk about housing affordability, but we have to acknowledge that there are some markets where there's just no such thing as housing affordability. But to them, I say we have great weather here in Brandon. And it's a wonderful place to live. And if the market you're in isn't accommodating you, we have lots of room, and we'd love to see you down here at WCG TV. We'd even maybe get you on a round table someday, and you could tell us about how your home buying experience and how you got away from the market you couldn't afford and found a nice place to live.
What he said. Yeah. Okay, we're kind of running out of time here, so let's try and speed through some of these already.
That went fast.
This one, I like this one personally. Permanently remove GST on children's clothing. Now,
huge.
Clothes are expensive. I'm an only child, and for my family, money was never an issue, but. Still though, when I remember being a kid and going to even places like Superstore, like where they have their clothing department, and seeing the prices for shirts and like for just decent shirts and jeans. I'm looking at these prices going like, even back then when I was a kid, when things were relatively more affordable, and I'm looking going, this is expensive. Like for clothes, it's the same material, same cheap material. Yep. Just because, there's a certain brand name slapped next to it, it instantly jacks the price up. And then so with all of that in mind, then you slap tax on that too, which just makes it go even up more. So to permanently remove GST on children's clothing, I would go as far as to say, just remove it on all clothes. Because I think, because here's the thing. People need clothes. We are... Regardless of what your view of the world is, us Homo sapiens, we have been wearing clothes for quite a long time. We're a society that wears clothes. We need clothes. So let's not make it harder to buy and wear like just decent clothes. Like I'm not saying like make things cheaper so that everyone can go walk around looking like they're from the Victorian era. But if someone wants to buy like a decent collared shirt and some khakis, don't make it like a third of your paycheck just to buy like one or two pairs of either. Like,
did they have corsets in the Victorian era?
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Well, I'm all for corsets, so you should take that back.
For you or for others?
Yeah, love corsets.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think in a way to help families out, I think that's very good for children's clothing. I would say if you really wanted to be bold, remove it on all clothes. Or sorry, I should say non-luxury brand clothes. Because luxury brands, I don't know how on earth you go, because that's not a luxury.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Simple.
You're getting into a logistical spider web, though. Right?
I guess so.
And for idiots like me who like everything to be simple, when I hear you talking about that, all of the problems start exploding in my head. But so if the challenge was to simplify this into something that we could all understand, well, we can't scrap GST, I don't think. I would probably lay off the children's clothing, but I would get into the diapers, the strollers, and the car seats. These are
right, because those are a drain of money.
It's not that clothing isn't a necessity, obviously, but my child and I lived at Value Village. That's I don't care if there's GST on a $2 pair of slacks, right? Whatever. But you brought up the same point. Designer brands. Should we be GSTing these people? Well, maybe if you're not in Value Village, maybe then you should be paying GST. And if you can't pay GST, well, then obviously Value Village is right up your alley. I thought putting clothes on my boy wasn't a terribly expensive endeavor until he learned what fashion was. Then Value Village was no longer on the table.
Right.
Then we're in and at that transition point, I then had to pay a lot more money for clothing. Right. However, if I wasn't able to meet my son's, I need this article of clothing, if that wasn't available to me, I would have dragged him back to Value Village regardless, because you do what you can.
You're going to wear this pre-used shirt and you're going to like it.
You're going to like it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And I tried to set an example for him while he was young.
Sure.
So I bought my clothes at Value Village right beside him so that he didn't have the social stigma that people have about secondhand clothing. A lot of people wouldn't be caught dead in it. I think they should lighten up. That's my 3 cents.
Fair enough.
All right.
Yeah. But again,
Yeah.
just personally, I just think making it easier for families either way, whether or not you're getting into spiderweb territory with what isn't and isn't, anything that can help families out, the better.
Yeah, you're not going to lose any votes helping families. That's for sure.
I think, why don't we, again, with just our limited time, how about we talk about just some of these conservative points just with affordability. Let's talk about TFSA enhancement.
Oh, TFSA.
So increase the annual contribution limit for TFSAs by $5,000 if invested in Canadian businesses. Now, as someone who invests in the stock market, cool.
On its face, it reads like a sound policy. However, as we discovered when we tried to find Canadian products, and then we discovered that calling yourself a Canadian product can mean you're either made with Canadian ingredients by Canadian employees, or you can be owned in Canada, or you can be owned in America using Canadian employees and Canadian products, or you can be owned in America using American workers but using Canadian products. Like, there's a lot of different ways to call yourself Canadian.
Remember Dad's root beer?
Dad's root beer is exactly what I was referring to. And so now if the government's going to start telling me that they are able to decide what a Canadian business is and what it isn't, I just point to Dad's root beer and go, seriously, you guys are going to track this level of scrutiny for how many businesses? I don't think they can deliver. I don't think that's a promise that they've really put a lot of research into. If you want to increase the annual contribution limit by $5,000, then just shut up and do it.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. I mean, I'm all for like increasing the contribution limit, but to putting all these like, oh yeah. We're going to increase it. But it's like, no, just Increase it.
Right, because they got to hire a guy to now investigate every business to find out how Canadian it is. That sounds like a waste of
And
taxpayer
I don't
money.
want to do work.
Yeah. Well, that's a taxpayer job, right? So we're paying to save. No, let's just make it easy so that everybody can save,
Just
and then
increase the contribution, and there will be smiles all
Easy.
across investors.
I really like the tax-free savings account because it maybe in your case it may have even played a role, but in some people's circumstances it's their first introduction to the stock market.
It helped me buy a car.
There you
So,
go.
I mean,
so you're a great example.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, I'll just do a personal plug. If you don't have a TFSA, please get one. It's really neat.
Absolutely.
Anyway, moving on. Because we have another part here about the environment. Again, we're kind of running out of time here, so why don't we kind of bullet point some of these?
Okay.
Immigration. Why don't we?
I thought we're environment or we're immigration.
Well, I was saying we kind of already talked about the environment for a little bit. So, immigration and healthcare. Why don't we kind of smash those two together? So,
yeah,
let's talk about immigration first. And this is a very hot button topic, but
I would actually appreciate the youth perspective on immigration. Actually, I think that's a great way to start.
My opinion, I think immigration is important. I think anyone should have the right to live wherever they want. But I'm of the opinion of, I think a majority of Canada, our numbers currently are too high. And the temporary foreign worker visas, they're unpopular. I share that same view. But generally, yes, I do support immigration. I just think the numbers they are too high. Like the 500,000 people a year. Because the problem is with the lack of housing and healthcare, high immigration just puts a strain on it.
So I'm gonna twist my question to make it harder for you to answer. I'm warning you that it's going to be an ugly question.
Back me into a corner.
It's going to be an ugly question.
Okay,
and I only do it to illustrate how hard it is to talk about this subject.
Right.
So let's get a firm number from you. How many refugees are you willing to turn away from the Canadian border?
Okay, so we're using the term refugees.
Right. See,
refugees specifically.
Right, but we're in the umbrella of immigration, and refugees are wannabe immigrants that have hit such a low point in their life that they have no other choice but to knock on our door.
Well, okay, so there's two paths I could take her. I could either turn the sword back on you saying that is like almost a fallacy, like you're trying to catch me and like a haha got
That's
you.
That's why
moment.
I warned you. You have to be nice to me because I warned you.
And I said sorry first. No. Okay. If we're just gonna take the answer that you had at
you don't have to answer the question. I'm gonna let you off that.
I will. I'll say this point. I'll give a very simple answer to this. If they are refugees fleeing a war-torn country, take them in. But if it's if someone is immigrating from a country that is financially, economically, politically stable, like they're not fleeing a war, they're just like someone coming from Germany coming to live here.
Well, we actually watched an earlier example. I think it was Saudi Arabia not taking any of the.
That's right.
Of the
Saudi Arabia
refugees
took
from
zero.
The war.
So during the Syrian refugee crisis in 2015, Saudi Arabia took in zero. A lot of the neighboring Arab countries took in zero. But Germany took in 800,000, I believe, close to there.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's one of the things. So I guess, but again, see, like that's the thing.
It's a spider web.
Yeah. Again, your question does kind of simplify it in a way because it's like, okay, well, where are the refugees coming from in Canada's
and how did they get here?
And how did they get here? Where are they coming from? What are they fleeing? What's the situation? Yeah. But generally, I think maybe the empathy side of me says
yes.
In a time where
to say no. That's why I asked you that question. It's hard to say no.
If their option is either to seek asylum or face, a battalion of guns pointed at them that have no regard for whether or not they get shot or the enemy gets shot, then yeah, you take them in because especially when like women and children are being subjected to that, like that's not like that's traumatic. Like for like a lot of the Syrian refugees, that's traumatic. Like as a kid, sailing across the Mediterranean Sea, like there were gruesome photos of dead children washing up on beaches. Like that is not okay. But, again, okay, let's say there was like 50,000 people and 50,000 people coming from a war-torn country, like that was in the middle of war, versus 50,000 immigrants that were coming from like a completely normal, safe first world country, you take the refugees in first.
Yeah.
I think that's just, I think just morally that is the correct thing to do.
Get them off the boat and then figure out what the heck
Exactly.
to do next.
Yeah, exactly. And if they want to, stay here for a few years, maybe the problem sorts itself out and then they go back. That's their choice. And if they want to stay, I mean, again, depends on what happens back home. But if they want to stay, I mean, it would be really, really crappy of a country to like kick them back out.
Yeah.
Especially if the conditions from where they came from were still negative.
Yeah. And the way I would answer the question is I would probably lean into the Saudi Arabia example a little bit more and put the refugee question to, instead of putting it to individual countries to sort out how many everyone's going to take, like Germany takes so many, France takes so many, whatever the numbers work out to. I would put it to a larger umbrella group like the UN. And what the UN can do is say, well, let's set aside some land on a bordering neighboring nation. We're going to temporarily call it Little Ukraine, like Poland is doing. Right. Basically, Poland is taking in Ukrainian refugees at staggering numbers.
Yes. En masse, yes.
Now, what the UN can do in a situation like that is, okay, with Poland, let's map out a little bit of territory that we can call temporary Ukraine. And then that gives everybody somewhere to go, somewhere to stay. Like if you're looking for your mother or your mother looking for your son, where do you go? Do I go to Germany? Do I go to France? Do I go to Canada? No. The UN has set up a place for everybody in a neighboring country that is safe from attack, because no one's going to attack Poland without causing some serious issues.
And making sure that they're funded enough so that there's shelter, food,
send
and
the
water.
money and the
don't just set up the place and then just say
exactly.
Peace, because that would be a humanitarian violation.
And then
pretty much.
Canada. We have it pretty well off here because we're not surrounded by a bunch of war-torn countries. Then Canada can buy into that pool with Germany and France and say, I'll take 10%, I'll take 20%.
Yeah. Or countries that aren't in war, they could send peacekeepers. They could, and people who want to donate, they can help donate.
Peacekeepers are going to be guarding that.
Right.
And keeping the security, because everyone's new, like nobody knows what to do. There's no police, there's no fire, there's no ambulance, right? That's where peacekeepers come in. You bring in the services, you maintain the order, keep everybody safe.
And that's a positive way to end it off, because we are out of time.
We're as safe as we can be.
We're as safe as we can be. We gave the safe answer, I think. But that wraps up today's conversation of the 2025 federal election, talking about some policies before we get to debate time. At the time we're taking,
we only got about halfway through.
We only got about halfway through, because
so stay tuned for the next.
Yeah, for part 2. But I think this helps highlight that it's a very nuanced topic or topics.
Yeah,
there's no easy answer. This is not a 5-minute discussion. It has to be a multi-hour discussion. And
there's a lot of huge topics on this election. And,
absolutely,
and I don't.
That have a lot of extra weight to them, maybe perhaps more so in the past.
And subtle nuances, lots of cobwebs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of cobwebs in this election.
Exactly. So pretty much. So thank you very much for watching today's episode. And from Colin and Kevin, we hope to see you again soon.